The Guardians just finished a tough stretch of baseball, but is July the most important month of the year for this team?
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Monday edition of Locked On Guardians. I'm your host, Justin Latta. Before we get things started today's episode of Locked On Guardians is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Do not wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnUSA.com/locked-on. Thank you all for being here. We are free wherever you get podcasts, obviously, YouTube and all the other good audio channels. I want to thank you all the listeners every day tuning in, even though it was a tough weekend for the Guardians. Before we get started today, I'm Justin Latta, your host. I've been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. Other places you might have found my work include Guardians Baseball Insider, the News Herald, the Morning Journal, my newsletter Next Year in Cleveland. I also occasionally appear at Prospects Live. And, of course, this is Locked On Guardians, where you get your daily fix of Guardians content, the majors, the minors, the draft. So you're here to get your fix. We're happy to have you. Guardians finished a tough stretch against the Royals. Tough 13-day stretch overall. They didn't have an off day. A tough month overall for them in general in terms of schedule, and came out of it okay. And they got some reinforcements coming, we hope. Seems like they do. But July, I think, is going to be a very important month for this team. We'll get into why on today's show. Let's start off with the good news. Gavin Williams is coming back this week. It looks like he will be pitching probably on Friday. They've already got their pitching matchups announced for the rest of the White Sox series. We'll get into that. So you're looking at a home return over the weekend against the Giants for Gavin Williams coming back. Now, there are going to be some pitch restrictions, Chris Antonetti said, with Williams coming back. As we noted the other day, he made his final rehab start in AAA, and he did not get into the sixth inning. They kind of wanted him to get there. He did not. But he still threw 82 pitches, which is pretty good. The real question is going to be just more, up and down for him coming back onto the mound for sitting. The good news is the fastball velocity is good. The Guardians say he's reported no pain. Everything looks normal, feels good. It's just going to be, battling rust and just being in control in the pitch count and building him back up. I don't think he can do any worse than Triston McKenzie. I hate to say it. I've always been a big fan of Triston McKenzie, the person, and the upside in terms of what he had potential to do in this rotation, and he has done in the past, at least in 2022. But Gavin Williams is back. I don't want to sit here and say that he's got to save the rotation, but what you've been seeing from McKenzie lately, Allen pitched okay on Sunday, but not great. Carrasco has been better the last few turns through, but some days you don't really know how things are necessarily going to go for him. So Williams has to come back and be better than those guys, right? He can't be any worse than they are. I hate to sit there and throw a whole ton of expectations on Gavin Williams, but again, he is better than the options you've been going with. If he can give you 5 innings, I'm not even asking for a quality start right here. He's taken the place of Triston McKenzie's start, which have rarely gone into the 4th inning. And when they do, it's not been pretty. He leads the league in homers allowed, leads the league in walks. Those are not a combination of either stat categories you want to lead Major League Baseball in, or any level of baseball. Truthfully, if you are leading those categories in any level of baseball, you're probably not going to get much further than where you already are. So he can't be any worse. So at least we can say we don't need him to save the rotation. We just need him to be better than Triston McKenzie. And as we've been saying for, everybody says this, and we always say it on this podcast, right? These decisions are somehow made for you. Every time you bring someone back off the IL and you're like, wow, whose spot is he going to take? Because you can't do this and you can't do that. The decision always gets worked out by itself. When Gavin Williams was on the road to recovery, we thought, well, he'll take Carlos Carrasco's spot because he's the worst pitcher in the rotation and he's struggling. And, obviously we had to wait for Gavin to come back a little bit longer because of some setbacks and all that. Well, at one time people were saying, well, he's got to replace Logan Allen. Logan Allen is really struggling in this rotation. And Logan Allen has struggled. But Logan Allen at least got you into the 5th inning today with the game close. It wasn't pretty, and he definitely, I don't think anybody's going to say it's his best start, but when he left the game, he had a chance to win, and we'll talk about that because I know people weren't really thrilled with how things went after he got pulled from the game, or just who he got pulled for, but he gave you a chance to be in the game. When he got pulled, this team was only down, 2-0, and a inherited runner scored. You were in the game. You had chances, somewhat. Gavin Williams just has to be better than that. All he has to do is pitch 5 innings and give up 3 runs or less. This offense can handle that. This bullpen can handle that. What they can't handle is being down 5 or 6-0 like they were today on Sunday, and they can't handle 3/5 of the rotation going 4 innings every time out, or 3 times in a row even, which is really tough when those guys are back to back. And you've got to bring in the bullpen, and you don't have a lead, or you did have a lead, and Triston McKenzie gave it right back because he gave up a couple home runs again. You can't have that every time. You can't. So the bar for Gavin Williams to come back and quote unquote save at least a spot in this rotation isn't that high. We know what Gavin Williams could do, and I'm going to tell you again, and I know this isn't going to be the favorite thing for some people to hear, but it's the truth. I know it's the truth. And I think deep down, even if you don't like to hear it, it's the truth too. The Guardians are not going to trade for a pitcher that is better than Gavin Williams. And what I mean by that is they are not going to go out and get Jesus Luzardo is hurt, so that doesn't really count. I don't think they're going to trade for him. But let's say Garrett Crochet. Garrett Crochet is roughly at the level, maybe better than Triston McKenzie, then everyone's better than Triston McKenzie right now, the level of Gavin Williams. Like, maybe that's the best chip, right? And for what it's worth, Bob Nightingale, you want to believe him or not, and always be aware of what you believe he puts out there. But he thinks that Garrett Crochet is going to be traded because the White Sox tried to extend and they got no dice and they want to do it. And I think they should. The Guardians aren't trading for Garrett Crochet. Let's just be honest about that. The potential pitcher that Gavin Williams is, he is a potential ace, at least number 2, maybe even just number 3. I don't know that the Guardians, I know they're not going to go out and get an ace. Probably not going to get a number 2. Number 3, maybe. But the potential that Gavin Williams has to be, they are not going to equal in a trade, no matter who they acquire, if they acquire anybody, which we'll talk about again in today's show. Gavin Williams is it. He is your best acquisition for this rotation. The fact that you've got to July 1st in first place by 6 or 7 games with 2 starts of Shane Bieber, with no starts of Gavin Williams. Now, by the way, you have the best bullpen in baseball, and 2 years ago, I know he had a rough year last year, but he was still okay, and you certainly didn't want to come into this year without him, right? Trevor Staffen hasn't pitched for this team this year, and he won't, obviously, but he was their setup man. He was their second most important reliever in 2022 and made the playoffs. And I know he had a rocky year last year, but you probably didn't want to come into the year without him, right? You don't have him. The fact that you got to July 1st in this position and you're adding a Gavin Williams who looks healthy, seems healthy, it's just going to be about knocking off some of the rust and building him up to go 6 innings or so. And he does have long innings because he will walk some guys, and guys foul stuff off. That happens to Tanner Bybee. But you want to know what? We'll talk about Tanner Bybee in the second segment, but he did what aces do. He stuck around long enough to help the team win the game, and he pitched darn good on Saturday. That's what Gavin Williams can be. You're not going to acquire someone better than that. And the great news is the odds are so low that he just can't be worse than Triston McKenzie. And I don't think he can be. He's not going to lead the league in home runs in the second half. He's not going to lead the league in walks. Certainly not both. So the bar is very low. This is exciting to get him back. I think we should feel good about this. Even if the first start or 2 is rough, he only goes 5, or he, isn't, an ace level guy, there's not a whole lot of room to go down from Triston McKenzie. I mean, unless Gavin Williams is getting knocked out in the first inning, I don't see a whole lot of room to go down. I think it's going to be much better. So you've got that Friday. I know we should temper expectations, but I'm excited to see Big Gav back and excited to replace one spot in the rotation and flip the calendar, move on from that mess. Now your rotation, hopefully it's 3 strong, and you'll figure out the next 2, hopefully one of the trading deadline. As far as Triston McKenzie goes, look, this is his last option. They're going to set him down. He's going to go back to AAA. He's obviously healthy. I mean, he hit 96 on Friday night. He has not thrown a ball that hard since 2020. So I don't believe it is health for him. Chris Antonetti said as much. He said after every start, he says, I feel fine. I feel fine. And again, I've said on the show before, velocity doesn't necessarily tell whether you're hurt or not, because Shane Bieber was throwing about as hard as he did a year ago, maybe even a little harder, honestly. And his elbow was toast, unfortunately. But his velocity wasn't going up. It wasn't like he was hitting 95 again, like he was in 2020. So if Triston McKenzie was still throwing, 90, 91, 92, I'd say, well, it's possible he's hurt too. His velocity has been going up. It's all about control with him. And I think it's also about confidence. The guy everybody in this game relies on confidence, but you've got to be confident enough to know that even on your worst days, you're still good and you still belong in this league. And Triston has belonged in this league before. He was a great pitcher in 2022. He had 2 great postseason starts in 2022. We know that pitcher is in there. Chris Anthony said the velocity, the pitch metrics, all the data on his pitches looks good. He just is not throwing strikes, and he doesn't look confident in where the ball is going every time. So he's going down to AAA. This is his last option year. Going into 2025, or even the rest of this year, I'll talk a little bit about more about him in a second, but it's imperative for both parties, for McKenzie, obviously, but also for the Guardians to get this right, to figure out what's going on with McKenzie, because at some point they're still going to need him, whether it's this year or next year. This is still a team that needs him. He is still a good major league pitcher. At least he has the talent to be one, and he's shown it before. They need to get that guy back. So this is the right call, but it's imperative they get it right, figure him out, and get him right. We'll talk a little more about the Matt Boyd situation. We'll talk about why July is the biggest month of the year for the Guardians, at least in 2024 until October, if you get there. And we'll get into the Guardians' latest stretch in June. And I think it went pretty well. I know people probably don't like where it ended on Sunday, but it was a good month and a good stretch for them that could have been a very tough one. So we'll get into that coming up. Let's talk about our friends over at Prize Picks. They are the #1 daily fantasy sports app. They have over 5 million active users. That is why they have the #1 sports app. And right now, you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks. All you got to do is make 4 correct picks, and you're able to turn $10 into $1,000. And if you're looking into promotions to see how ways you can maximize your correct picks and boost that money, they've got you covered every week on Prize Picks. Lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays. Look out for that. The Guardians are back in action on Tuesday. Help your lineup hit, and getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Friday. So play on Tuesdays, lower stat projections. All you got to do is pick more. And then if you play on Friday, you can get some of your entry fees back. The Guardians have the White Sox on Tuesday. It is Chris Flexen for the White Sox. That should be a good matchup for the Guardians hitters. I like Jose Ramirez on a batter score there. I even like John Kenzie Noel there. I think there's a good chance Flexen is going to throw something in the zone where Noel will not have to chase for it, because we've seen it's an issue. And Carlos Carrasco's going. Doesn't strike out a lot of batters, but the White Sox don't walk. So good chance that he will be able to do a pretty good game score there, because the White Sox don't walk. If any of this sounds good to you, get in on the action with Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for that first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. The Prize Picks, it is pick more, pick less. It is that easy. Look, we know there's never a fun time to talk about taxes. It's just not one of those things as adults we want to do. But here at Locked On Guardians, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team. Offseason, the draft, which we always talk about, spring training, the playoffs. And tax season is year-round. It is one of those things you have to do. Just because it's over doesn't mean the IRS is going to come after you for unfiled taxes. They can garnish your wages, they can levy your bank accounts, and seize your property. Don't let them target you. If you don't like talking about taxes, let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. I tell you all the time about our issues here as 1099ers, or I work out of state, so I have to file with Rita a lot. And she is a lot of trouble for me. So tax experts are the way I get it done. They have over 14 years of experience, an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau. Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. So whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning like me, or maybe you finally hit that parlay you've been playing all season, you need help filing correctly, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit Tax Network USA or TNUSA lockdowntoday.com. Be sure to mention Locked On Guardians at checkout, and you will also receive $250 discount off of their services. And Locked On Sports Today is the best way to get local coverage of all the teams you care about. Don't watch the national shows. They don't know your team as well. They're yelling, they're screaming. This is a 24/7 streaming channel brought to you every day with the biggest stories, not all the screaming, and they bring you can't-miss analysis, opinions on the teams you care about from people who know about your team. So streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We cover your team every day. Really quickly on the Matt Boyd thing. So the Guardians are only signing him to a deal for the rest of 2024. There is no incentives in terms of next year. There's no vesting option like I thought there might be. It is a major league deal. He is on the 40-man roster. He is on the 15-day IL. But Chris Antonetti said he is likely not available until August. So to me, that says this is just depth. This is just a guy just in case. And it didn't even guarantee what role he was going to be in. It didn't say he's a rotation option. He just said a chance to be ready to help us out in August. So again, to me, as I said on Friday, I don't think this takes the Guardians out of the trade market in terms of starting pitching. It hedges their bets. It gives them extra depth because we don't know who they're going to acquire. And the starting pitching market is going to be difficult, no doubt. And we'll talk about that in the third segment today. But this hedges your bets a little bit. We'll see what happens with Boyd. I thought maybe end of July anyway, but yeah, I guess August makes sense. So we'll see what happens. It better not be the only thing they do. I don't think it will be. I'm going to be honest. I am leaning that direction. I don't think it will be. It's hedging their bet against the trade market, if you ask me. All right, so finally, let's talk about the Kansas City series. I know nobody wants to rehash it. I'm not going to rehash a ton of it. I'll just say it was a tough stretch for the Guardians. They didn't pitch well most of the weekend, which has been an issue. They did not hit well because they only scored 1 run Thursday, 3 runs on Friday, which didn't matter because their pitching couldn't hold anybody down Friday. Saturday was great. And then Sunday was more tough pitching for them, and 2 runs doesn't really beat a lot of teams. So tough series for the Guardians, without a doubt. Definitely wanted that to go better. I will say this. They went 14-11 in June, and we noted this was going to be a tough schedule for them. They started the month out with Washington, and they played Miami. It was a terrible team. They took 2 and 3. They played Cincinnati. They split there. The Reds were playing very well at the time. You had Toronto twice, who they're fighting for their lives up there in terms of playoffs and jobs and all that good stuff. You had the Mariners, who are in first place. They have a great pitching staff. You beat them 2 out of 3. And then you went on and beat Toronto. Then you had to go to Baltimore, who's now in first place. And you had a good series in Baltimore. And then you came to Kansas City. I feel like the Guardians were just gassed overall. I feel like they were just gassed. They won 7 straight heading into Kansas City, right? I'm sorry, they won 7 straight before they got out of Baltimore. They dropped the finale in Baltimore, as we said. Wasn't a terrible loss. They had some bad losses in Kansas City. Again, I said on Friday, you dropped the Ben Lively start. That stunk because of how it set you up the rest of the weekend. Triston McKenzie was as bad can be, and that's why he's going back to AAA. And then Sunday, Logan Allen was just fine enough. And the bullpen, was tough, and they couldn't hit Seth Lugo. I think the Guardians were just gassed. I'm going to be honest. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying it just looked like a top part of their schedule that was tough. They had a 16-game stretch where they faced Toronto, Seattle, Toronto twice, Baltimore, and Kansas City. Those were all important games. They went 9-7 in that 16-game stretch. And then after they had the off day against Toronto, in between the what series was it? They had an off day. After they came home against Seattle, they had that Monday off, right? So from June 18th until Sunday, they played 13 games in a row. They went 8-5 in that 13-game stretch. And what they did during that 13-game stretch where they went 8-5, they increased their division lead from 4.5 to about 7. Now, I'm recording this before the end of the Twins and Mariners game on Sunday. So it's currently 6.5. The Twins look like they're going to win, so it's going to be 6. So they went from this 13-game stretch where they faced, again, the Mariners, the Blue Jays, the Royals, and the Orioles. They were up 4.5 coming into the stretch where they played 13 straight games with no off days. And they increased their lead to 6. So you moved it up to a 1.5 games. in that stretch. It got as high as 9 when they won that 7 in a row. So, yeah, over the weekend, things look kind of rough, right? You know, McKenzie, again, not good. He's going back to AAA. You're getting Gavin Williams back. You feel better about that. They've got to figure out Logan Allen. You know, Carrasco survived against Baltimore. I'll take that outing right now every time out from him until you can figure out what else to do between him and Allen. The bullpen isn't in shambles right now because it's been rested, whether or not, you know, between losses, you haven't used your big guys and you've used some mop-up guys like Darren McKagan. I know that was a controversial opinion we shared about appreciating what he did because it's not an easy role. The bullpen's in good shape, and you're off on Monday, and you're coming home on Monday against the White Sox and the Giants. This team, every time they are faced with a tough stretch, they always rebound. You know, Saturday, Tanner Bybee pitched his butt off. The offense was good. They got to Cole Reagans, who is, you know, a Cy Young candidate, maybe, I think. He's really good. They knocked him out of the game early. I know they didn't do well against Seth Lugo, but they knocked out Cole Reagans. They hit him good. They added on. They made it so you didn't have to go to a lot of the big guns in the bullpen on Saturday night. Bybee played the role of ace. He stopped them. You're still in a good position. You know, the lead is increased in the stretch. You're coming into a softer schedule against the White Sox and the Giants. I know the White Sox have played them tough, but go back and look at the schedule every time. This is why I'm not down, even though they had a bad weekend. They had a bad weekend in Kansas City. There's no doubt. I'm not denying that. I'm not making excuses, but they lost 2 in a row to the Yankees early in the year. Guess what? They came back and they beat Boston on the road. Then they came back and beat Oakland after that. They played a tough stretch of games against Atlanta and Houston at the end of April with some gut-punching losses. They came back out and they won a series against the Angels. They won a series against the Tigers. Then they lost 3 in a row to the White Sox, which shouldn't have happened. But guess what? They finished that series with a win. They went into Texas, beat the defending world champs. Then they came home and they rattled off 9 in a row between the Twins, the Mets, and the Angels. And then they lost a series in Colorado, which they shouldn't have lost. They came back home and they beat Washington in a series. And they split with the Royals. And then they beat Miami on the road. Every time this team has had a bad stretch, 3 in a row against Toronto and Seattle to open that 13-game stretch. They came back and they won 7 in a row, and that increased their division lead. They had a bad stretch against the Royals here just now. I expect when this team comes home to rebound, play well against the White Sox, even though they haven't done a good job of that this year, and the Giants, who are not a good team either. No guarantees, but that is who this team has been all year, and I'm going to continue to expect that from them until they don't. If they don't, it'll be a problem, and we'll talk about that. We are now past the halfway point of the 2024 season. July, to me, is the biggest month of the year. This is the make or break month for the Guardians. Even though October is big, obviously, we want to get there. But this is a make or break month for them. I'll tell you why on the other side. And the Guardians are coming home this week, which is a good time to get some bets in on FanDuel. Tell you what, July is not always the best sports month. The NBA playoffs are over. The NHL playoffs are over. College isn't here yet. The NFL is not here yet. We never want sports to stop. I know I never do. It's fun. But FanDuel is keeping us going with sports whenever we want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up any bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus every day. So right now, even though there's not a whole lot of sports to bet on, you can go on there and get your fix in of baseball, of tennis. There's all kinds of stuff you can still do on there. Look, the Guardians are coming home against the White Sox. I like some of the stuff you can play against Chris Flexen on Tuesday. Drew Thorpe is a tough customer, but I like what the offense can do. And I feel good about Lively against them. He pitched well last time out there. Carrasco has been better lately. I like to go out there and see what he can do on FanDuel. If any of this sounds good to you, head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start making the most out of your summer. Get some bets in on the Home Run Derby. They're changing the format. I don't know what it's going to look like, but go in and get a bet on the Home Run Derby. I love the Home Run Derby. I love the All-Star break. I can say that because Jeff isn't here. So go on, get a bet in on FanDuel on FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And of course, you know when the Guardians are back in action on Tuesday, you can catch all the action on your SiriusXM app. All you have to do is search Guardians to hear the hometown call. No blackouts on SiriusXM. Just letting you know. All you got to do is search. All right. I said July is the biggest month of the year for the Guardians. And here's why. Not only is it the trading deadline, it's also the draft. And those two things to me are kind of tied in here because the Guardians don't have to feel they should feel pressure to make a move for sure, because starting rotation needs somebody just replace one spot. I don't care if it's Carrasco or Allen. I don't care. Just one of them. Crazy enough right now, it might seem like Allen is the guy to replace. I can't believe we're here saying that, but as you know, things are unpredictable. The rotation spot you think you're replacing isn't the one you end up replacing, like Williams for McKenzie. Didn't see that coming. And I think Triston McKenzie will be back. I don't know if it'll be this year. Maybe it will be, but he's still important to this team. If they can turn him around somehow this season, that's I guess found money at this point. I hate to say it, but this is a huge month for the Guardians because it's the trading deadline. They have to do something. You do not often get into these positions and you can't control when your window opens. 2022, we thought, this is the start of something great. Came back in 2023 and not so great, right? They had to make some changes, whether it was to the hitting philosophy and just a whole bunch of new faces in the dugout, as well as Francona retired. You don't know how good bullpens are going to be. If you have been a fan for this team a certain amount of time, you remember how good the 2005 bullpen was, right? The 2005 bullpen, Bob Wickman, Bob Howery, Arthur Rhodes. I think Scott Sauerback was around then. I'm not sure. David Risky. Bullpen was fantastic. 2006, Rafael Betancourt. You had Rafael Perez. 2006, that bullpen was abysmally bad. They were horrible. Now, they had other issues too in 2006, but that bullpen reversed roles. They weren't good. 2007, your bullpen was good again. You had Joe Borowski wasn't anything to write home about, but you had Raffy left and Raffy right. Those guys were good. You had good relievers that year. Guess what? 2008, that bullpen, bad again. The Guardians have a championship caliber bullpen right now. And as we've seen again in 2016, bullpens can dominate the playoffs. Yes, you would love to have, the Mariners starting rotation. You'd love to have, Corey Kluber and vintage Carlos Carrasco and Danny Salazar, any of those guys in this rotation from back then. You would love that. Isn't the case. They need to go out and make a trade. And that's why I'm saying this. This is the biggest month of the year because you have a bullpen that's going to help you win in the postseason. Bullpens dominate the postseason. You don't even want your starters to go 3 times through the order. Tanner Bybee is your best starter. I don't even know, in the playoffs, facing the Orioles or facing the Mariners or the Yankees, you may not want him going 3 times through the order, but you don't have to worry about it because if he gets you a lead after 5, bring in the bullpen. But make a move because right now, this rotation, as currently constructed, we'll see what Gavin Williams does when he comes back. A top 3 of Bybee, what we know Williams can be, and Lively is fine. I think it can be good. That 4th spot, I don't know. You have to piecemeal it together. But if you go out and we'll see what happens with Matt Boyd. To me, Matt Boyd is found money too. If he gives you anything good, that's great. That should not be a guy that you're like, yeah, this is how we're paying the bills. This is what we're going to do. We're going to base our entire postseason around it or whatever. But it's found money. It's $20 in your back pocket in the dryer if he does well. You didn't know you had it. You have the draft this month. The Guardians have to nail this draft, number one, for different reasons, not anything to do with this year specifically, but you're picking number 1 overall and you're in first place. There are not any teams in history of baseball that can say that. There are none because it's never worked like that. So you have a really unique position here. Trade some prospects. I'm saying this all the time now. I have covered prospects since 2007, and I have been a prospect clutcher. I was incredulous in 2016 when they traded for Andrew Miller. I thought Clint Frazier was going to be an all-star. I really did. He's playing indie ball at the age of 30. Justice Sheffield's in AAA. Ben Heller and JP Fireisen are the only guys really making a major league impact. I don't think they even are right now. Go back to the Brewers trade. We talked about it. The failed Jonathan Lucroy trade. Nobody burned them in that trade. Sean Armstrong is the best of that deal. And I know you're going to say, well, what about, Doyle Alexander and the 84 Tigers? They traded John Smoltz. The Tigers won the World Series last year. The Rangers, they traded Cole Reagans. They'd love to have him right now. They'd love to have him. And they got Aroldis Chapman, who I don't think was that big of a deal for them because he was all right, but he wasn't like a key piece. It wasn't like he was 2016 Aroldis Chapman or Andrew Miller even. But the Rangers, they're flying their first ever World Series pennant. You think they're mad? No, they won the World Series. Last year. So the Guardians can use this draft. Not only that, they can rebuild their farm system through the draft and have prospects to trade. And no one's saying go trade Chase DeLauder for Yusei Kikuchi or go trade Angel Martinez. I don't even know for Jack Flaherty. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not saying go out there and trade any of your top prospects, guys that are, Ralphie Velasquez for Jack Flaherty. Don't do that. No, don't do that. But go out and use what you have. This system is not that bad. I know coming into the year I was down on it. I'm still a little down on it because of injuries. It's hurt him a little bit. But Juan Brito's been fantastic. I really like him. Ralphie's been good. Churrio's been good. Angel Hanau has really impressed me recently. I'm really getting higher on him. Clemmy's been so-so. You've got a couple pitchers that are breaking out. Messick, Peterson. Those guys are starting to break out a little bit. Angel Martinez is still in there. Maybe someone like Jose Tena. Maybe you use Valera or Noel as a trade piece. I wanted to get to Noel a little bit more today. I'll probably save that for tomorrow's show a little bit. But you've got some pieces, and you're picking first overall in the draft. And you've got 4 of the top 84 picks. You can put a lot back into this system through the draft. You have a solid system. It's not great. The injuries have hurt it, but it's still a good system. You're going to be just fine if you trade the prospects, especially this year with the draft, what you can do with it. Knock the draft out of the park, spend the money in the draft, which they will, make good decisions, and add the talent, make a trade for a starting pitcher. There are guys out there to be had. I know it's going to be a competitive market because there's going to be a lack of options, and everybody wants starting pitching. Even if they don't get a Jack Flaherty, maybe they get, someone from Oakland lower on the list, whatever. Get one of those guys, stabilize the rotation. And if that isn't the biggest move, get a reliever, get a hitter. Those options are a little bit more plentiful. Maybe you pay a little bit less. Breaking the team. This is a huge month for the Guardians. They're going to be able to improve their team for the playoffs, and they're going to be able to improve their farm system with the draft. There aren't many opportunities that exist to do both of those in the same month, and they have a chance to do it. All right. Thank you all for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. I know it wasn't a fun weekend for the Royals, and nobody wants to rehash that. Hopefully, I didn't spend too much time on the Royals series, so you're not wallowing in self-pity like the Grinch. This team's fine right now. Let's see how they respond. I'm not worried yet. They're in first place. Again, they increased their lead during the stretch. I know everyone's down on how they finished the stretch, but they increased their lead. So right now, if they rebound, they're going to be just fine. This is going to be an exciting month, guys. The draft and the trading deadline. We have so much to cover this month. I'm trying to get a special guest on for Tuesday's episode. We'll see. If not, I've got your mailbag questions. We've got draft stuff to cover. I've got minor league stuff to cover. I want to talk about John Kenzie Noel, obviously. And I asked you the other day about, is the playoffs enough? We'll get into that on this week as well. Thank you all for listening, downloading, rating, reviewing. I appreciate all of you. Go, Guardians, go. Rebound from this ugly stretch.